And courage, the courage to think critically, the courage to connect thinking critically with spiritual dimension to rigorous intellectual engagement. And there is, because the love is at the center of it, and if justice is what love looks like in public, then you're concerned about the least of these, concerned about the poor, working people, concerned about indigenous peoples, black and brown and yellow and gay brothers and lesbian sisters, and those who've been colonized, dealing with it. It's a certain way of being in the world. That's what philosophy really is, you know what I mean? And there's joy in being in the world in that way, but there's tremendous danger because you refuse to be well adjusted to injustice. That can get you in trouble sometimes.
Well, actually, in preparation for this conversation, it's been very interesting because, of course, I've read a lot of your work, Race Matters, Democracy Matters, Breaking Bread with Sister Bell. But I thought, let me just get really serious. The brother has written a book on philosophy, The American Invasion of Philosophy, a genealogy of pragmatism.
I think fundamental question, one of the fundamental questions in life is acknowledging one is wounded and having to choose between being a wounded hurter and a wounded healer. And if you choose to be a wounded healer, then you're not denying the wounds, but you are refusing to drink from the cups of bitterness and bigotry and cruelty and cynicism. You're refusing to succumb to resentment and revenge. Now, for me, that comes from a tradition, because I'm just a small moment in a great tradition. I believe in ancestry appreciation. So that in that sense, those persons who shaped me, I was blessed when I arrived here. There's a dear sister, Linda Jameson, who was a distinguished Esquire lawyer here in the Bay Area. She wrote me a little note saying, I know that you're always proud to be the son of Clifton and Irene. And that's the highest honor I will ever receive as long as I live, to be the second son of my mother and my father. And I just said that in Cairo, Egypt, and they said, but what about the titles and the positions? I said, that's sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. The love is at the core of it. See, I am who I am because somebody loved me. I am who I am because somebody cared for me. I am who I am because somebody attended to me, and they didn't have to, especially in a white supremacist civilization. So here, under this Jim Crow-like, Jim Crow Senior, which is legal, Jim Crow Junior, which is de facto. I grew up Jim Crow Junior. My mother grew up Jim Crow Senior. But I still had to deal with white supremacist bombardment, and the question became, how would I, coming out of the West family, deeply shaped by Shiloh Baptist Church, because I am a Shiloh Baptist kind of brother. It's true. It's true. It's Reverend Cook and Deacon Hinton and Sarah Ray, my Sunday school and vacation Bible school teacher. And they'll always carry weight within me because they're the ones who gave me the kind of spiritual resources to make it from my mother's womb to tomb. So by the time I got to Harvard at 17, I was already well prepared spiritually. And the Black Panther Party was right next door to Shiloh. So I was in very close discussion and dialogue with some brothers and sisters who were doing the best they could to make sense of the nature of the oppression of the people they loved and what they were going through. And you can agree or disagree, ideologically critique, but the important thing was, here you had some young brothers and sisters who were willing to live and die to bear witness with a form of resistance and resiliency in the face of a repressive apparatus of the U.S. nation-state, COINTELPRO programs, and government, Washington, D.C. elected and corporate elites and oligarchs on Wall Street and so forth. And so I was deeply shaped by them because I'm a Jesus-loving free black man. I had a little distance from their secular agnosticism. In fact, we have some wonderful dialogue as we go into the Panther office. I got to talk about this in the book.
Oh, yes.
You know, they turned on Marvin Gaye. I said, oh, that critique of the black church is pretty pervasive. You know, no Marvin Gaye in the black church, you know that. What about James Brown? No James Brown at the black church. The first group he ever sang was the Ever Ready Gospel Choir here at Bobby Bird. So that the black church deserves all the criticism it can get, because most dominant forms of religion are well adjusted to greed and bigotry. But the prophetic ones, the prophetic wing, it could be prophetic Hinduism, prophetic Judaism, prophetic Christianity, prophetic Islam, they all bring critique to bear. And so I was blessed to be shaped by that. I didn't ask to be in this circumstance. I didn't make choices in the circumstance, but I didn't ask. And that's why for me, gratitude is the proper attitude. You know what I mean? So we do want some recovery, but we got to recover from. And our Quakers are quite exemplary in terms of recovering from, because they don't spend a lot of time with too much tradition. Even their prayer meetings are pretty silent. You know what I mean?
Could you say a little bit more, because it just is embedded throughout your work, about the prophetic tradition of Elijah and that Old Testament tradition? I'm impressed because social activists like and intellectuals like Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel speak a lot about the Old Testament and those prophets.
Yeah, well, no, for me, that is the core of what it's all about, not just to be religious, but to be human, which is to say, how do we keep track of forms of idolatry that convince us to identify what is sacred, what is good, what is beautiful, and what is true with status and power and wealth, commodities, material possessions, and so forth. So you got idolatry on the one hand, but then on the other hand, you have indifference. You know, the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel used to say, indifference to evil is more evil than evil itself, because it's contagious. It becomes a way of life. It becomes there's a callousness, and therefore somehow you live your life by turning your back on your brothers and sisters of all colors who are poor and marginal and subordinated and so on. And the prophetic tradition says over and over again, for example, what the brother said to you about the country right or wrong. You can say, well, are you a Christian, brother? Yes. Well, every flag is under the cross then. Well, what is the cross about? The cross is about the perennial quest for unarmed truth and the perennial quest for unconditional love. Now, if you got unarmed truth and unconditional love sitting at the top, and if there's not enough love in America, not enough truth in America, then the flag deserves to be subordinate to the cross. So you can't have country right or wrong. You're getting it mixed up. You got the cross subordinate to the flag. And then he would say, that's a fascinating result.